Hey guys, I don't actually even know if anyone's going to come to this live stream because I haven't posted it anywhere and I just decided to go live. And let's be honest, usually I'm not live at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. And so I don't even know if anyone's going to show up today, but I got some stuff to say and I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about it. And if people want to show up, they can. And if they don't want to show up, then that's fine too. Because today I want to talk about my new friend, Twitter journalist Tony. Twitter journalist Tony. This morning, Jeremy Kauffman and I and Justin O'Donnell went to the State House in Concord to turn in 4,000 petitions to get Jeremy and I on the ballot in November Jeremy is running for Senate in New Hampshire and I am running for governor, I guess, technically. And it was a Herculean petitioning effort. It really was. Like, there were people in the LPNH that came through in just a massive way. And even outside of New Hampshire, hat tip to Rothbardian for doing amazing jobs. And we collected over about 6,000 petitions, and about 4,000 of them ended up being validated by the towns in New Hampshire that needed to validate those petitions. And we needed 3,000. We needed 1,500 from each congressional district, so we ended up turning in 4,000. So more than enough to actually get us officially on the ballot, and it's a big deal. And Twitter journalist Tony, instead of focusing on the issues that the voters of New Hampshire actually care about, instead of focusing on the fact that the LPNH spent months collecting petitions from voters all over the state of New Hampshire, Twitter journalist Tony instead wanted to ask me about mean tweets that he doesn't like. I swear to God. I swear to God. And so I gave Tony a piece of my mind. Because I'm going to be really blunt, guys. I'm going to be really, really blunt. Twitter journalists like Tony are the problem. Twitter journalists like Tony, who do absolutely nothing to report on what is going on in the schools, who leave people like me to do their jobs for them. And yes, in this stream, I am going to prove that I have done Tony's job for him. People like this who pretend to be journalists, and instead literally the very first question out of this guy's mouth to me was, well, you have a tone on Twitter. Okay, maybe not in that voice. I added the voice. Well, you say things that are mean on Twitter. This is the first thing out of his mouth. About 10 days ago or so, I got permanently banned on Twitter for reporting that a school district in New Hampshire, the Exeter Region Cooperative School District, has been an open and blatant violation of New Hampshire's divisive concept bill, the bill that is supposed to prevent the teaching of critical race theory in the classroom, but does not prevent the teaching of critical race theory in the classroom. I'll explain more about that in a second. I am the only journalist, because I'm not a journalist. People like Tony are supposed to be doing this. I am the only journalist in the state of New Hampshire who cared enough to look at the website for the Exeter Region Cooperative School District and ascertain that they have been an open violation of the state's divisive concept bill since the bill was signed into law. And I'm the one that investigated that. And I'm the one that reported on that. Because people like Tony, Twitter journalist, refuse to do this. They refuse to do this. People like Tony, Twitter journalist, refuse to give the people of New Hampshire the information that they actually need. People, and you know what's even more offensive about this guy? This guy used to work for the New Hampshire State Department of Education. Said some really fucking racist shit that got him in trouble there, and we're going to talk about that on this stream. Like legitimately racist, not like CRT racist, like legitimately racist. This guy refused to report on the fact that Chris Sununu watered down the anti-CRT bill, refused to report on the fact that critical race theory is still being taught in schools in New Hampshire, refused to do any journalism at all to ascertain which school districts in New Hampshire are still teaching these things in open and blatant violation of state law, leaves average people like me to do his job for him, and then has the nerve to show up when we're turning in petitions to get on the ballot after months of work, and the very first question to me out of his mouth is, "You say mean things on Twitter." I'm sorry, what? He could have asked me about my position on signing an executive order on day one to put cameras in classrooms in every public school in New Hampshire. He could have asked me why that executive order is necessary. He should damn well know that since he worked for the State Department of Education, but he doesn't. He could have asked me about that. He could have asked me about my plan to make the property tax optional so that parents don't have to pay into the corrupt government school system if they don't want to, and they can take that money and use it for homeschooling, use it for charter schooling, use it for private schooling. I don't really care. It is an initiative that would successfully defund public education in New Hampshire. He could have asked me about my position on critical race theory. He could have even asked me for the definition of critical race theory, which I'm sure he doesn't know as a Twitter journalist. He could have asked me about Chris Sununu threatening to veto the parental rights and education bill, which killed that bill in the state, and my support for that. He could have asked me about grooming in the classrooms, which I've exposed and he hasn't as a Twitter journalist because I do more journalism than he does. He could have asked me, even could have asked me about secession. I was wearing a secession t-shirt. He could have asked me about secession, but no. The first question out of Tony's mouth is, "You say mean things on Twitter." Is that the type of demeanor that you would bring into the governor's office? No, Tony. No. The demeanor that I would bring to the governor's office is being an absolute fucking pit bull for parents. Because I do the work that people like you, Twitter journalist, refuse to do. I do the work that exposes what is going on in the public schools. Unlike any other journalist in New Hampshire, I am the one that has exposed that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is an open violation of the state's anti-CRT law, which you still have not reported on, even though it's been out there now for 2 fucking weeks. Why hasn't Twitter journalist Tony reported on the fact that one of the most well-funded school districts in the state of New Hampshire is in an open and blatant violation of the state's anti-CRT laws? Why hasn't he informed the parents of New Hampshire who have children in that school what that school is teaching their kids? Why did I have to do your job for you, Tony? You, as you pointed out to me today, as you were asking me about mean tweets, you told me, "I used to work for the State Department of Education, and I just think that your statistics are wrong." I'm going to prove to you, Tony, that my statistics are not actually wrong. Tony today was like, the state of New Hampshire only spends between $10,000 and $20,000 per student in the public schools. And my position is that many schools in the state of New Hampshire are spending significantly more than that. They are spending between $20,000 and $45,000 for children in the public schools, which I'm going to prove to you because unlike Twitter journalist Tony, I actually have the real numbers and I actually do the work that he refuses to do. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Twitter journalist Tony. Now, what I think a lot of this might be stemming from is the fact that, Tony doesn't actually have a very big platform. Now, you guys know, I don't get, oh, fuck. God damn it. I don't give a flying F about numbers. I don't care about numbers. Not at all. But what I do care about is actually getting messages out there and getting information to parents. But people like Tony, who only have 129 followers on Twitter, even with my permanent... Tony, even with my Twitter account permanently banned, I actually still have more followers on Twitter than you do. Really impressive Twitter journalist. Usually they get a little bit of a complex when uppity women like me have a bigger platform than them. They get a little bit of a complex. And then they start saying things like, well, what about your mean tweets, instead of actually asking about policy or anything like that. So that was like the first thing I looked for, is like, how many followers does this guy have? 129. That explains a lot. But let's look at who Tony actually is. Tony was featured in this article on The Patch, where Tony now works as a journalist. New Hampshire education official under fire over racist remarks. New Hampshire Department of Education official Tony wrote that the state could become a cesspool with more diversity. Now, I want to be really clear about this. I think that a lot of remarks are labeled as racist when they're not really racist. But I think what Tony said was kind of fucking racist. I do. I think what he said was a little bit racist, but I think that most of the time when the news media calls people racist, I actually don't think it's because they're engaging in real racism. Most of the time, I think when the media calls people racist, they are just trying to gain power over them to get them to shut up. But let's just read what Tony actually said as a former State Department of Education official. And this was back in 2018. So, sometimes, listen, I have said my fair share of stupid things. Many of those stupid things I said on Twitter, if I'm going to be honest about it. A New Hampshire education official came under fire on Thursday over a recent Facebook post claiming more diversity could turn the state into a cesspool. That kind of sounds a little racist, if I'm honest about it. Again, I'm not talking about critical race theory racism. I'm talking about legitimate racism. Department of Education Communications Director Tony wrote the post in response to the New York Times story last month called New Hampshire, 94% white, asks, how do you diversify a whole state? Diversity for diversity's sake doesn't bring us anything. Tony wrote. An extreme example, 1,300 illegal alien Dominican drug dealers moving from Lawrence, Massachusetts to, say, Concord, New Hampshire will make the state 1% more diverse, but it would also bring more crime, higher taxes for public safety. He added, we don't want or need New Hampshire to become any kind of cesspool. We have enough problems, and many of us don't want or need to pay more taxes because of the new people moving in. All right. Now, the point that Tony is making about criminals moving to New Hampshire, if he had said criminals, I probably wouldn't have as many issues with this statement. However, Tony's kind of implying that anyone who is not white is a criminal. And that the only non-white people who would move to New Hampshire are drug dealers. And I'm sorry, that's not effing true. That's not true. Now, I don't agree with diversity for the sake of diversity, but Tony, you want to talk to me about tone and mean tweets, huh? You want to talk to me about tone and mean tweets? I have never said anything to the effect of this. I have never said anything to the effect of the only way New Hampshire is going to diversify is if non-white drug dealers move to the state, which is going to make it a cesspool. Dude. That's cringe, man. I'm sorry. That was a bad statement. That was bad. And this is something that conservatives do all the time. It really is. And this is why I am even more offended at the fact that the very first question out of Tony's mouth at the State House today was, what about your mean tweets? He could have asked about any number of issues that have more relevance to the voters of New Hampshire than Twitter. Let me tell you guys what. Twitter is less than 2% of the population using that website actively. Less than 2% of the population using that website actively. And that's what he thinks is more important when he damn well knows, we at least have some inkling that Tony would probably have issues with critical race theory, would probably have issues with that being taught in the schools. Does he ask about any of that? No. What about your mean tweets on Twitter? Now, here is some of Tony's illustrious journalism at the Patch, reporting on on exhibits at like the Chamber of Congress, reporting on the weather, reporting on food festivals and film festivals and food trucks, and a woman arrested on DUI. And I'm not saying this type of reporting is unimportant at all because, local news reporting matters. Oh, Spirit of New Hampshire hiring. This type of reporting is necessary, right? You need to have local news. You need to have things like this, like he's reporting on home sales, reporting on other people's journalism. Not really, it doesn't really seem like Tony's doing much journalism of his own, probably why he doesn't know how to ask questions as a journalist. I don't know. But there's nothing like, oh, weather again, weather. See, now we're starting to see why Tony might have a little bit of a complex, aren't we? Now we're starting to see. But you know what Tony's not reporting on? Tony didn't report on stuff like this. In April of 2021, by the way, the same week that I left the Republican Party to join the Libertarians, the same effing week that I left the Republican Party to join the Libertarians, I posted this. Republican Chris Sununu wants to run for Senate. We thought he wanted to run for Senate at the time. Turns out he's running for governor again. But he's working with the Democrats to support critical race theory. Did Tony ever report on this? Did Tony, as his work as an illustrious journalist in New Hampshire, did he ever report that Chris Sununu, Republican, openly worked with the Democrats to support critical race theory being taught in the classroom in New Hampshire? Did Tony ever report that Chris Sununu sabotaged the anti-CRT bill in New Hampshire? No. Why would he? He's a Twitter journalist. Twitter journalists don't do actual journalism. They leave it to normal people like me to do their journalism for them. They leave it to people like me to do the real work that they refuse to do. They leave it to people like me to expose that critical race theory prior to the divisive concept bill being signed was taught in Concord, was taught in Manchester, was taught in Bedford, was taught in Exeter, still being taught in Exeter, was taught in Derry, was taught in Holderness, taught all over the state of New Hampshire. Taught all over the state of New Hampshire. And I was one of the people. I wasn't the only one in New Hampshire. We've got some other, like Anne-Marie Banfield is a great journalist in New Hampshire who has actually exposed this stuff. Anne-Marie got no problem with, because Anne-Marie does actual fucking journalism, unlike Tony, Twitter journalist. People like Tony leave it to people like me to tell normal citizens what is actually going on. And then they have the nerve to show up and go, but what about your mean tweets? So no, Tony never reported on this. He never reported that Chris Sununu pandered to the Democrats by working with his Attorney General, John Fromella, and State Senator Jeb Bradley to water down the anti-CRT law that was passed in the House in New Hampshire in 2021, completely watered it down, completely took the teeth out of it, so that critical race theory is still taught in the classrooms in New Hampshire today. Has Tony ever reported on that? No, because he's too busy on Twitter, doing his wordles on Twitter. But I've been reporting on that. I've been doing that. Let's see what other journalism I've done that Tony refuses to do. Oh, August 19th. The Exeter Region Cooperative School District is openly violating New Hampshire's anti-CRT law. And in this article, I outlined explicitly how I found this out. And it was all based on information on their website. All based on information that was completely in the public. Completely in the public. Tony, Twitter journalist, could have gone onto the website of the Exeter Region Cooperative School District at any point in the last year and a half and have done the work that I did to expose that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is openly violating the state's anti-CRT laws. Did Tony do that? No, because Tony was too busy doing his wordles on Twitter. Let's just go back to Tony's tweets until the 19th and just see. Did he report on this? No. Lightning strikes, Wordle, wrestling. Oh. Now this was, I put this on Twitter. I put all this information on Twitter with the New Hampshire politics hashtag. So if Tony had just followed the New Hampshire politics hashtag on Twitter, he would have seen a thread that I wrote outlining explicitly how this school district in New Hampshire is currently an open violation of New Hampshire state law. If he had just looked at the New Hampshire politics hashtag on Twitter, it was all right there. It was retweeted by state reps. It was shared by state reps. But no, Tony is a Twitter journalist. He's a Twitter journalist, which means he doesn't actually do real journalism. He leaves it to people like me to do his job for him, even as the lights are going out. There we go. Even as the lights are going out. And then has the nerve to show up and say, but what about your mean tweets? And here's the other thing. Because Tony wanted to talk to me about the schools. And I said, the public schools in New Hampshire, many of them are costing us between $25,000 and $45,000 per year per student. And Tony said, well, actually, it's between $10,000 and $20,000 a year per student. I used to work at the State Department of Education, and I know that it's between $10,000 and $20,000 per year per student. Oh, really, Tony? Oh, really? Let's go to schooldigger.com. Schooldigger.com, New Hampshire. Let's just look. Oh, God. Let's just look. Hang on. I just want to go into the state. Why are you like, okay, here we are. No, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted at all. Go into, gosh. This is why I had to turn off my ad blocker to get on this website, and I'm not happy about it. Okay, school rankings. There we go. Finally into it. Now, Tony is correct. There are schools in New Hampshire who cost between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. There are schools in New Hampshire that do. But I want to look at right here, per pupil expenditures. So he is correct that there are school districts in New Hampshire that are between $10,000 and $20,000 per year. But what happens if we click this again? Oh! Look at this, Tony, Twitter journalist. Look at this. Tony, on schooldigger.com. Waterville Valley Elementary School, $46,800 per year per pupil. Rye Elementary School, $38,000 per year per pupil. Madison Elementary School, $35,000 per year per pupil. New Durham Elementary School, $33,000 per year per pupil. Kenneth A. Brent School in Tamworth, $30,900 per year per pupil. Groveton Elementary School, $30,000. Russell Elementary School, $29,800. Sunapee Central School, $29,200. Mount Lebanon School, $28,000. Bernice Ray, $28,000. The Memorial School in Sanborn Regional School District, $27,000. Lincoln Ackerman School, $27,000. Hanover Street School, $26,000. Holderness Central School, where they are absolutely teaching critical race theory in the classroom. It is on the homepage of their damn website, Twitter journalist Tony. $26,000 per year. And for Enfield Village School, $26,000 per year. Josiah Bartlett Elementary School, $29,900 per year. Newmarket Elementary School, $25,000. New Hampton School, $25,000. Plainfield Elementary School, $25,000. Tufton Borough, $25,000. Twitter journalist Tony, who used to work for the State Department of Education, so he knows everything. Twitter journalist Tony doesn't want parents to know that there are absolutely schools in New Hampshire, many of which cost between $25,000 and $45,000 per year per pupil. Twitter journalist Tony doesn't want you to know this, because he's not a real journalist. He is a Twitter journalist that is not doing his job to inform parents and taxpayers of what it is costing to educate students in New Hampshire. Do you know what that's buying us? Do you know what that's buying us? Nation's report card. Nation's report card says that less than 36% of students graduate from public high schools proficient in reading. Less than 33% of students graduate from public high schools proficient in writing. Less than 26% of students graduate from public high schools knowing how to do math. And Tony wants to talk about my tone on Twitter? Which do you think is more important? That the state of New Hampshire, in many of the schools in New Hampshire, as demonstrated by schooldigger.com, do you think it's more important that sometimes my tweets on my now permanently banned Twitter account, which was permanently banned, by the way, for reporting that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District was an open violation of the state's divisive concept bill, which Tony has yet to report on as a Twitter journalist? Which do you think is more important? My tone on Twitter, where less than 2% of the adult population in the United States are actually active? Do you think my tone on Twitter is more important? Or do you think the fact that New Hampshire schools are an open violation of the state's divisive concept bill, and we are spending between $25,000 and $45,000 per year in many of these schools per pupil? Do you think that's more important? You know, Twitter journalists like Tony, they don't actually care about reporting the news. They don't care about that at all. They don't care about keeping parents informed. They will never fight for parents. They only care about whatever the drama is of the moment. And that is why people like me have to get up every single day and do their job for them. I will always and forever treat Twitter journalists like Tony with the righteous indignation with which they deserve. Because not only are they failing at their jobs, they are requiring people like me to do the work that they refuse to do. That they absolutely refuse to do. And Tony wants to call me out for mean tweets when he's saying stuff like this. Well, the only non-white people that would move to New Hampshire are illegal alien drug dealers. Are you fucking shitting me, Tony? Are you shitting me? As the spokesperson for the State Department of Education, and why are you even working for the State Department of Education to begin with? As governor, I would do my very best to get as close to abolishing the State Department of Education as I possibly could. But you have mean tweets, and so that's really the most important thing that we need to talk about. Tony had access to my website. Tony could have seen my platform. He could have asked me about cameras in classrooms, which I would sign an executive order on day one as governor of New Hampshire to put a camera in every public school classroom so that parents could actually see what's going on in that classroom. He could have asked me about defunding every state-funded program with the word equity in the title, which I would absolutely do as governor. He could have asked me about making the property tax optional, and 2/3 of our property taxes do go towards funding the public schools. He could have asked me about lobbying for the divisive concept bill, the one that Chris Sununu worked with Attorney General John Formello and State Senator Jeb Bradley to water down, to pander to the Democrats. This was a bill that was destroyed entirely by Republicans. He could have asked me about that. He never bothered to report on that. I did. He could have asked me about Chris Sununu saying he was going to veto the parental rights and education bill, which basically killed that bill in the state legislature. He could have asked me why Chris Sununu doesn't want parents to have access to see what the curriculum in the classroom is and what that bill was about. He could have asked me about that. No, mean tweets. Mean tweets. He could have asked me about my plan to make homeschool the capital of, or New Hampshire the capital of homeschooling in the entire country. He could have asked me about that. He could have asked me how I would incentivize entrepreneurship to get more homeschool entrepreneurs to support parents to make it easier for them to homeschool. He could have asked me about my plan to turn the public against public education by exposing what the public schools are doing, journalism that I do every single day while Tony's reporting on the weather. He could have even asked me about secession. He actually did ask me about abortion. To his credit, the very first words out of his mouth were, "What is your position about abortion?" And I said 15 weeks with exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. And by the way, fun fact, I am actually the most pro-life candidate of any candidate running for governor of New Hampshire. Chris Sununu supports abortion up until birth. I don't. Tom Sherman supports abortion up until birth. I don't. If the state legislature in New Hampshire passed a law that said 15 weeks with exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, I would sign it as governor. Absolutely. If they passed it, I wouldn't initiate it myself. I'm actually fine with the state's abortion law right now. If there have to be laws on the books, and this is not a battle I'm fighting at this particular time, if there have to be laws on the books, I'm absolutely comfortable with where New Hampshire is on this right now. It is not the most important thing. But Tony could have asked me about that. Tony, as an alleged conservative or libertarian, or like he claims to be a libertarian, I guess. I don't really know how that's possible, but okay. He could have asked me about that. He could have asked me about legalizing weed and psychedelics, which, again, the Republicans in New Hampshire do refuse. Could have asked me about that. Didn't say a word about that. Could have even asked me about. I'm literally wearing a secession T-shirt right now. I wore a secession T-shirt to the State House today to turn in the petitions because obviously I support secession. Obviously, I support a vote on secession by the people in New Hampshire, just like 58% of Republicans. Tony, did he ask me about that? No. But you have some mean tweets on Twitter and your tone on Twitter. And I didn't even know you'd been permanently banned because I don't pay attention to things. But, your tone on Twitter is actually the most important thing that the voters of New Hampshire care about. No, Tony, I disagree. I think that the voters of New Hampshire care more that I have done more reporting on critical race theory in the schools in New Hampshire than almost any other journalist in New Hampshire, with Anne Marie Banfield as a possible with it as an exception. She's done more. She's done a really good job. I have done more reporting on this than almost any journalist in New Hampshire. Certainly done more reporting on this than you, Twitter journalist. The only person I am still to this day, the only person that has called out Chris Sununu publicly in New Hampshire for siding with the Democrats to sabotage the anti-CRT bill last year. Chris Sununu is very literally the reason that critical race theory is still taught in schools in New Hampshire today, because he sabotaged the bill to pander to the Democrats. Chris Sununu and the Republican Party sabotaged the bill. I am the only person to report on this. And Tony, Twitter journalist, thinks that parents of New Hampshire are going to be more concerned about my tone on Twitter when they're sending their kids every single day to schools that are costing between $25,000 and $45,000 a year, Tony. You think I didn't have receipts to back this up? Probably, because you pay more attention to Twitter drama than you do to actually doing journalism, which is why I have to do your job for you. I don't get paid to be a journalist. Tony does. Tony does. Tony gets paid to be a journalist. Tony gets paid to report on the weather. Look, Tony's reporting on politics all the time. Does he actually report the truth? I'm going to guess not. Oh, the library. I wonder if we go back to August 19th, if we are going to have any reporting from Tony about the fact that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is in open violation of the state's CRT law. I'm going to guess that we're not. I'm going to guess that we are not going to have that from Twitter journalist Tony, because Twitter journalist Tony didn't even bother to look at the New Hampshire politics hashtag on Twitter. Thank you, MetaStep, for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Oh, a house is for sale. Ooh. And again, I'm not suggesting that these local news articles are not important. I'm not suggesting that they are not important, because they are important. This type of local news and local reporting is important. I just wonder, Tony, Twitter journalist, if you bothered to report on the fact that I exposed that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is openly violating New Hampshire's anti-CRT law and has been since the law was signed, and they were doing this all on their website. I ascertained this just by looking on their website and doing the journalism that Twitter journalist Tony refuses to do. So I'm just wondering, did Tony actually report on that, or was he too busy reporting on the weather and what's going on Twitter? Oh, look at that. All the way back to August 19th. All the way back to August 19th. And it looks like Tony has not reported that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is openly violating New Hampshire's anti-CRT law right in front of their faces. And the reason I had to do this is because there wasn't a single journalist in New Hampshire who bothered to look into it. The reason that I bothered to do this was because I was literally tipped off by parents in the school district that this was happening. Why are parents in the school district coming to me, Tony? Why are parents in the school district coming to me, asking me to do the journalism that their local journalists are refusing to do because you're more interested in my tone on Twitter? That's really the thing that parents in New Hampshire care about, is my tone on Twitter? This is what you wanted, wasn't it, Tony? This is what you wanted. You wanted to see Carlin be a bitch like she is on Twitter, because Carlin being a bitch is more important than the state indoctrinating kids in the public schools, for which they are paying between $25,000 and $45,000 a year based on schooldigger.com data. Tony, you want to come on the channel and have an actual discussion about how you're a Twitter journalist and I have to do your job for you? You are invited anytime. You can contact Justin. He knows how to get in touch with me. But for right now, let's not pretend that you know more about what's going on in the schools in New Hampshire than I do. Let's not front that you, with your reporting of the fucking weather. Well, actually, Carden, most schools in New Hampshire are spending between $10,000 and $20,000 per year per student. Let's keep going. Lyme Elementary School, $25,000 a year. New Franklin Elementary School, $24,900 per year. Simons Elementary School, $24,800 per year. At Lemster Community School, $24,800 per year. Peterborough Elementary School, $24,500 per year. Sandwich Elementary School, $24,400 a year. Sutton Central Elementary School, $23,900 per year. Tony, how much you want to bet? How much do you want to bet that if I look into the Portsmouth School District, I'm going to find them openly violating the state's anti-CRT law? How much do you want to bet that if I look into the Lyme School District, I'm going to find them in open violation of the state's anti-CRT law? How much do you want to bet that if I look into the Kearsarge Regional School District, I'm going to find them in open violation of the state's anti-CRT law? How much do you want to bet, Tony? How much do you want to bet that if I look into the Rye School District, I'm going to find them in open violation of the state's anti-CRT law? How much do you want to bet that if I look into the Tamworth School District, I'm going to find them in violation of the state's anti-CRT law? I will look into every single school district in New Hampshire, Tony. We'll do a whole series of it. I will do the journalism that Twitter journalists like Tony refuse to do. Refuse to do. But really, what really matters to parents in New Hampshire is Carlin's tone on Twitter. That's the most important thing. You want to know why I have a tone, Tony? You want to know why I have a tone? Because I have to get up every day and do the journalism that people like you refuse to do to inform parents what is actually going on. That's why I have a tone. Every single day for the past 2.5 years, I have to do the work that people like you, who are being paid to do this, refuse to do. Do you think that parents want a governor that is openly working with the Democrats to teach their kids critical race theory in public schools? And again, this says Senate because this was back in April of 2021 when I left the Republican Party because they are openly fucking feckless when it comes to actually protecting kids. And we thought Chris Sununu was going to run for Senate in 2021. Turns out he wants to run for governor again because he wants to work with the Democrats to indoctrinate more children in the state of New Hampshire into critical race theory and social justice and social emotional learning and all the rest of it. And if I have to go through every school district in New Hampshire to prove that that's exactly what they're doing, I will do the work that people that Tony refused to do. And I think that the parents of New Hampshire appreciate that I am the pit bull that you refuse to be. Because people like Chris Sununu lie to them every single day about what is going on in the schools. They are lied to every single day in the schools that they are paying, many of them, between $25,000 and $45,000 a year to send their kids to. Yes, some of them are less than that, Tony. Well, I work for the State Department of Education, and I know that most schools are between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. Still too much. I don't even care if many of them are between $10,000 and $20,000 a year, Tony. It is still too much. It is still too much when less than 36% of students graduating from public high schools are proficient in reading. 33% of students who graduate from public high schools are proficient in writing. 26% of students who graduate from public high schools are proficient in doing math because from the time they are in kindergarten, they are taught social justice and advocacy and critical race theory and radical gender ideology. And people like you, Tony, Twitter journalist, are lying to parents. Lying to parents every single day of your life about what is going on. And then saying, well, I worked for the State Department of Education, and therefore I can't possibly be lying to parents, even though there's data on the internet that shows emphatically that I was lying to parents. But I used to work for the State Department of Education, as though that's a feather in your cap. And really, Carlin is just wrong, even though she's got this here data on the internet that shows that she's not wrong. But I won't look at that because I'm too busy doing my Wordle on Twitter and being a Twitter journalist. So, you get what you fucking deserve, folks. You get what you deserve. And if you are going to rely on Twitter journalists like Tony, who are saying things like the only reason that non-white people would move to New Hampshire is if they're illegal alien drug dealers, which is a little bit fucking racist. Legitimately racist, not play racism, not critical race theory racism, not Democrats calling everyone they don't like a racist. That's not what I'm talking about. Legitimate racism to the point where he was even condemned by Frank Edelbutt. This is the guy that is now reporting on the weather on Patch, hasn't done a single story about the schools in New Hampshire, does no investigating at all, does no real journalism at all, just reports what people give him in press releases to report, leaves the real journalism to me. When I was the one that was talking about how Chris Sununu was working with the Democrats to support critical race theory in schools in New Hampshire, leaves the real journalism to me, where I was the only person in New Hampshire who took the time to follow up on what parents asked me to follow up on, to expose that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District is an open violation of the state's anti-CRT law. By the way, which hasn't started to be investigated yet by the Attorney General because he's a shill for the ACLU. I think that the parents of New Hampshire are smart enough to know not to listen to Twitter journalists like Tony, and I think that they want a pit bull in the governor's office who will tell them the truth about what is going on in their schools. And then has the receipts to back up that, yes, Tony, there are absolutely many, many schools in the state of New Hampshire who are paying between 20 and, or I shouldn't say they're paying because they're not paying. The taxpayers are paying between $25,000 and $45,000 per year to educate these students, and not teaching them how to read, and not teaching them how to write, and not teaching them how to do math. But you know what the real problem is here, folks? You know what the real problem is, according to Twitter journalist Tony, is Carlin has a tone on Twitter where she was permanently banned for reporting that the state is not investigating schools that are in open violation of the state law. My tone is the real problem here. It's not the schools. Nothing to see here from former Department of Education employee Tony, who's now a Twitter journalist. Nothing to see here. The most important thing is Carlin's tone on Twitter. So that's really all I had to say. That's really all I had to say. These people are infuriating to me. They are infuriating. These people deserve to be treated like the walking pieces of human garbage that they are. Walking pieces of human effing garbage that they are. People like Twitter journalist Tony have allowed this to happen. People like these Twitter journalists have allowed this to happen because they're just more concerned about their wordles on Twitter and on pictures of space and of memes than they are in actually reporting what is going on in the schools. And that is why the schools are the way they are. That is why there are drag shows sponsored by the city council, Because people like Twitter journalists like Tony don't report on this. That's why there are entire school districts in open violation of state law. That's why people like me are getting banned on Twitter. And you can see exactly why I got banned on Twitter there. Don't believe anything that fame whore Mike Harlow wants to tell you. That's why I got permanently banned on Twitter. Tony could have reported on that. School reform activist Karlin Borisenko banned on Twitter for reporting that the Exeter Region Cooperative School District was an open violation of the state's anti-CRT law and telling parents in that school district how to report that district to the state for the state to investigate. Twitter journalist Tony, this would have been right in Twitter journalist Tony's wheelhouse. It's like it's on his favorite fucking platform of Twitter. Because that's apparently all that matters in the world is what happens on Twitter, not actually what's going on in the schools. Don't worry, Tony. I'll do your job for you. I will continue to do your job for you. Fun times. Fun times. All right, guys. Now I need to go actually start getting to work because some people actually have to do journalism when Twitter journalists like Tony refuse to do it. So, Tony, can't wait for your piece on Patch that will probably get like 3 views. I'm going to make sure to post this in a number of different places so that people know what a bullshit Twitter journalist you are. And if you have any other questions or whatever, actually like to ask me like real questions about my platform, which you could read here at carlinlovesnewhampshire.com, you can feel free to follow up. I somehow don't think I'll be hearing from him, which is perfectly fine by me. All right, guys, that's all I have. I got to go for right now, but thank you for tuning in for this impromptu stream. And, well, I think we'll see you later. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a stream later. I got to figure that out, but I will see you guys soon. Take care, and we'll see you a little bit later, probably. Bye.